The president's poll numbers on COVID have dropped. Is White House concerned about that? How does it plan to address that issue, specifically because having people trust his opinion on this is a big question. People following public health guidelines.
Well, we think it's more a reflection of people being sick and tired of COVID. Tired, some of that is a reflection of people who are vaccinated being frustrated that there is still a percentage of the population who are not vaccinated, and that's impacting their daily lives.
So, Dagan, they blame everything on COVID. Weren't we just here the other day where the crime spike was COVID, too? Yeah. It's like everything's COVID. I mean, this is inflation, Afghanistan, lockdowns, taxes. I think there's more than just COVID.
Yeah, and it's not the Delta variant, actually. It's the Joe Biden standing in front of the American people and vilifying the unvaccinated and telling the vaccinated, you have every right to be angry with the unvaccinated when, if you're vaccinated, you're okay. You don't need to be angry at the unvaccinated. Oh, and it was Hunter's daddy telling the American people how to raise their kids at the same time. Yeah. You have an entire administration untethered to reality, and when they're caught in an untenable situation, their gut is to just lie. Lied about Afghanistan over and over and over again. Al-Qaeda gone from Afghanistan. Oh, Americans can get to the airport in Kabul if they want. Our allies are with us. How much more do the American people have to tolerate? You know what? When a 3-year-old gets caught with his hand in the Cool Whip in the refrigerator and he lies about it, that's cute. But not this old coot, this commander in chaos and all his minions lying over and over to the American people. Stop acting like we're stupid.
Dagan, you got to stop holding back. You're ruining the show. You just got to let us know how you feel. Come on. Jess, I mean, honestly, there's a lot going on here. You can track the numbers with these negative incidents. Like after Afghanistan, his numbers went down. It's clearly not all COVID.
No, it's a whole breadth of issues that are going on right now. And Martha mentioned it in the A block, the impact of inflation, where you have 80% of the country that's concerned about it. And that includes Democrats and a majority of independents. We talked about this last week, and I mentioned that what I would do is actually own slipping poll numbers by saying, I take responsibility for these decisions. I think net, we're going to be better off. This is a rough period. But I've always been someone that listens to the public. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at my policies to make sure that they're more in line with what you want. And Joe Biden won the primary, a huge primary, because he was the poll guy. He was the guy who said they don't want free health care for people who are here undocumented. They don't want to defund the police, et cetera. And that really set him apart. So that opportunity still persists. And on the COVID numbers, there's something within it that's more important, I think, which is the trust issue on this. And it used to be, and this is, I think, why Biden won the general election against President Trump, he was trusted more to handle this. And now there's not trust in the CDC, the FDA, or in the Biden administration at the same level. And I think that's what's really hurting him. You
know, to Jess's point, Jesse, when is he going to have that sister soldier moment like Bill Clinton had? Like, Biden hasn't had that. He hasn't woken up to the fact that the country didn't vote for a radical, Lenin leftist. He hasn't had that. Clinton had that moment and wound up getting reelected.
Yeah, he might have to shiv Bernie at some point. We haven't really seen any sign that that's going to happen yet, but...
Don't let him sharpen a toothbrush.
No. Maybe some Cool Whip to the face, Dagan. But you're right. It was immigration in Afghanistan that drove his numbers down. They're in the 30s there, and it was the searing images that people just can't forget about. Now, the economy, he's underwater with the economy, and that's inflation, and that's the labor shortage. His COVID numbers have deteriorated. They've gone from 60 to 50. So he faces a tough fourth quarter now because Delta could go up, but right now Delta's going down. That wave that has hit is going down, so that's good news. But if he could put a win on the board with these two spending deals he's doing, the 3.5 and the infrastructure, that could give him a little momentum going into the midterms. But still, this is a weak, wounded guy, no political capital, credibility shot. Independents don't want to touch this guy. Hispanics are running from the hills. White males, not a chance.
Yeah.
I would actually agree with Jen Psaki to a certain extent, and that is that I do think there's a lot of COVID fatigue at this point. Nobody expected that Delta was going to happen, and so people are sick and tired of it, and I think anybody who was president at this point would have a little bit of weakness based on that number. However, when we did our poll, the Fox poll, and we asked people, what is it that you are unhappy about with this presidency, the largest amount of people's reason, 22%, I think, if I remember correctly, was that they were concerned about his competence.
Yeah.
So that's big. And then it was Afghanistan, I believe, next in line. So that is not something that you can blame another wave of COVID that was unexpected on. That's a serious concern that almost a quarter of the people who were polled have.
Yeah, they say the most damaging political narratives are the ones that change a pre-existing notion of who you thought someone was. And if Biden ran on competence, that's why that's just so destructive to him right now. It's just not true.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.